Before starting this video, I do want to give a thank you to my patrons that support the channel. And if you would like to support the channel, there are some great benefits for you in the link down below. So with that, let's get into today's video. What's going on YouTube? This is Devin coming back at you with another video today on Pub Stomp MTG. So with this video, I'm going to be going over Sauron the Dark Lord. I'm honestly quite ecstatic to talk about this card because Sauron the Dark Lord is absolutely incredible as a commander. Honestly, this may be one I consider building myself because I love Lord of the Rings so much. I mean, who am I kidding? I'm going to be making so much decks out of this new set. It's going to be crazy. But one of my favorite characters is Sauron, mainly because he has such a deep backstory in Middle-earth. So with that being said, let's first read the card. He is a 6-mana commander. Being in Grixis colors, he is a legendary creature, Avatar Horror. He does have wards, sacrifice a legendary artifact or legendary creature, which means he basically has hexproof unless somebody wants to remove their legendary creature, or if they have a legendary artifact on the battlefield. He does also have whenever an opponent casts a spell, amass orcs 1, whenever an army you control deals combat damage to a player, the ring tempts you. And lastly, whenever the ring tempts you, you may discard your hand. If you do, you draw 4 cards. So first I gotta catch my breath after that paragraph of text, but honestly, this is everything you want to have in a Grixis commander. It protects itself, it makes tokens so that you can sacrifice them later, and on top of that, it gives you card draw. Sometimes I could be pretty bad at evaluating certain commanders, but Sauron the Dark Lord is looking to be one of the best Grixis commanders I've seen in years, in my opinion. I don't care, you can let me know down below in the comments how wrong I am. I'm going to stick to my word because this is an absolute unit of a commander. So with this video, I'm going to be discussing some cards you may want to put into your deck. I also do want to suggest some thematic choices because of course we are in Lord of the Rings. We want to make sure we put as much Lord of the Rings stuff in there as long as it aligns with Sauron. We're not going to be putting Gandalf in here or Frodo. I am going to be putting a lot of Lord of the Rings cards in here, but mainly the good ones because we are going for a high powered deck. We're not going to be going for a casual deck because of course we're Sauron. We want to take over Middle Earth. This is the best way to do it. So with that being said, I'm first going to discuss some of the thematic choices you may want to consider in the deck. So with that being said, the first card I did want to mention is of course the One Ring. It's indestructible, and when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn, and it will also provide you some great card draw. Next up is obviously a no-brainer with Mount Doom. So for paying 1 life, you could add a red or a black. You could pay 3 mana and tap it to deal 1 damage to each opponent. You could also pay 7 mana and tap it, sacrifice Mount Doom and a legendary artifact like your One Ring. Choose up to 2 target creatures and destroy the rest. Activate only as a sorcery. I know in a weird way, Sauron would naturally never get rid of his One Ring, but in case if you do need to get rid of it so you could destroy the board, you could do so with this. Of course, I had to give a quick mention to the Nazgul. You could have up to 9 cards named the Nazgul in your deck. But more importantly, we want to dive into the ring tempting you ability, and when the Nazgul enter the battlefield, the ring tempts you so that you can discard your hand and draw more cards off of Sauron. So that's what's really great about the Nazgul. They're essentially 3 mana, draw 4 cards with your commander out. And of course, we have to have the most faithful servant of Sauron with the Witch King of Angmar. So he does have flying. Whenever 1 or more creatures deal combat damage to you, each opponent sacrifices a creature that dealt combat damage to you this turn. The ring tempts you. You could also make the Witch King indestructible and tapping it by discarding a card. So this will definitely make a lot of opponents think twice if we do have Sauron and the Witch King on the battlefield to attack us, mainly because we'll have that ability to constantly be tempted so that we could draw more cards. Also, I did want to quickly mention Barad-dûr. I mainly wanted to include this because it is Sauron's fortress, and if creatures do die, you could amass an army if you wanted to. And the last thematic choice I did want to mention is Call to the Ring. So for 2 mana at the beginning of your upkeep, the ring tempts you. Remember, anytime you are tempted by the ring, you will draw 4 cards off of Sauron. Obviously, you'll discard some cards, but that's completely okay because you're getting 4 new sets of cards in your hand. This is honestly incredible value for this commander. However, I do do find the most use out of Sauron in a reanimation theme, mainly because we're going to be discarding our hand whenever the ring tempts us so that we could draw more cards. And I do believe the ring tempting us will happen more often than not in games, mainly because we have a huge army swinging, and also we do have a lot of different cards in our deck so that we could tempt ourselves more with the ring. We could also use specific tutors for the graveyard like Unmarked Grave and Tomb and Buried Alive. With these cards, we don't just have to rely on our commander discarding a big fatty into the graveyard. We could tutor for a specific fatty so that we could get some absolute value out of it. Then we could use some great enchantments like Animate Dead, Dance of the Dead, and Necromancy so that we could get that big fatty from the graveyard onto the battlefield. These are also combo engines with a specific card I'll get into later. But that does bring the question, what fatties do we want to reanimate to the field so that we could get some absolute value? So the first one I thought about, not necessarily thematic with Lord of the Rings, is Nezahal Primal Tide. You simply have no maximum hand size, and whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, you draw a card. That's it. You get to draw so much cards off of Nezahal, it's absolutely ridiculous, especially being against 3 other players. And you could also discard some cards if you want to protect it as well. Another card I did want to briefly mention is Burning Rune Demon. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for exactly 2 cards. Obviously, they can't be named Burning Rune Demon, but you don't have any cards that are going to be Burning Rune Demon anyways. You will reveal those cards, an opponent will choose one of them. The chosen card is put into your hand and the other into the graveyard. Then you will shuffle your library. So this is actually pretty great because we can tutor for something that we want in our hand and something in the graveyard depending on what our opponent chooses. In most cases, I've seen that people wanted to put like the big fatty into my hand and putting the reanimation spell in the graveyard. I mean, there's a lot of situational things you could come across when playing Burning Rune Demon. There is also another fun combo you could run in the deck that's actually worked pretty well for me in different decks, but I feel like this could work in the similar situation with Hoarding Broodlord. You can play an Entomb to put Hoarding Broodlord into the graveyard, then you could reanimate it so it enters the battlefield. When it does enter the battlefield, you could search your library for Saw in Half. It will get exiled, and then you could convoke it. You can convoke Hoarding Broodlord and then pay 2 mana into Saw in Half so that you get 2 Hoarding Broodlords on the battlefield with an ETB trigger. Then you would find a Burnt Offering and also a Peer into the Abyss. You would sacrifice one of those Hoarding Broodlords. You could pay into it by convoking the other Hoarding Broodlord and then sacrifice it for 8 total mana floating in the air, and then later you could cast Peer into the Abyss to draw half of your deck. So this isn't so much of a combo, it's more of a combo assembler where you find pieces to win the game. I mean, if you do draw half of your deck and you can't find a way to win the game, you probably need to tune it up a little bit, mainly because this is more of a high power 2 CDH deck. I mean, don't get me wrong, you could build the deck however you'd like. This is just one suggestion that I would put in the deck that you may want to consider when running a reanimation strategy. Also, there is some crazy synergy, and I mean absolutely insane synergy, with Razaketh the Foul-Blooded and Sauron the Dark Lord. Again, we are in a reanimator theme, so we'll be able to reanimate Razaketh on the battlefield, so we're never really going to be paying that cost in general. So I am painting a scenario in my mind where Razaketh and Sauron are on the battlefield. Say for example, someone wants to Swords to Plowshare your Razaketh, and you definitely don't want that to happen. The crazy thing about that interaction is the fact that whenever an opponent casts a spell, you amass Orcs 1. What you could then do is when that orc enters the battlefield, you could sacrifice it to Razaketh's ability. You could search your library for a counter spell to counter that Swords to Plowshares. That's just one scenario. Another scenario I did have in my mind is the fact if somebody's storming out on their turn, each time they play a spell, you can make an orc army, then you can immediately sacrifice it to Razaketh, so when they play the other spell, you could have that ability trigger again multiple times so that you could essentially get 5 demonic tutors. Honestly, the synergy between Razaketh and Sauron is absolutely incredible in my opinion. However, I did want to go over the main combo of the deck, mainly because we do want a way we could win the game no matter what in any instance. So this is a pretty classic combo using World Gorger Dragon and Animate Dead. We would need 3 cards like Mount Doom, Animate Dead, and World Gorger Dragon in order to win the game. So how this combo is going to work is you're going to have Mount Doom on the battlefield and World Gorger Dragon in the graveyard. You could cast Animate Dead targeting World Gorger Dragon. World Gorger Dragon will enter the battlefield and exile all your permanents on the battlefield, including Mount Doom. That will also include Animate Dead. Because Animate Dead leaves the battlefield, World Gorger Dragon has to leave the battlefield as well, going to the graveyard. Then since Animate Dead enters the battlefield again, it could target World Gorger Dragon in response, and then it's a rinse and repeat factor of putting World Gorger Dragon on the battlefield, and then exiling everything else, and then Animate Dead will trigger so that World Gorger Dragon sacrifices again. Then each time all your permanents enter the battlefield, when Animate Dead triggers to put World Gorger Dragon back on the battlefield, you could tap Mount Doom to deal 1 damage to each opponent. You could continuously do this until all your opponents are dead to win the game. I did want to make sure I incorporated some sort of Lord of the Rings card like Mount Doom to win the game, so I felt like this was a pretty fun combo to add into the deck. Obviously you don't have to do it, it's more of a guideline if you want to put it into your own decks. However, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on Sauron the Dark Lord. So far this is one of my more favorite cards that have came out in a while, mainly because it has such great versatility, giving you card draw, also having protection on itself, and making tokens for Razaketh, for example. I will say I am a little biased to Reanimator strategy, so that's probably part of the problem why I'm so excited of this commander. And for crying out loud, he is the true Lord of the Rings, and he's a fantastic character in the Lord of the Rings books and also in the Silmarillion. I found his character to be quite enjoyable, especially compared to Morgoth, where Morgoth is more violent and Sauron is more about like control. So it's very cool to see the differences between him and his master. Anyways, I need to stop nerding out so I can let you guys go. Again, thank you guys so much for coming by. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And is there any other commanders you're looking to see in the new Lord of the Rings set? Let me know down below, because I'm going to be making a lot of deck techs out of these Lord of the Rings commanders. So with that out of the way, thank you for stomping by.